Hello, everybody. I'm Mel, KS2G. This is the Ham Radio Contesting Forum. I'm going to try to tell you everything you need to know about amateur radio contesting. Thanks for being here. I'm going to try to go this real quick. We only have 50 minutes. It's hard for me to get in everything I want to say in that amount of time. If we run out of time for questions, you'll be able to email me at ks2g.arl.net. So without further ado, just a quick shout out to our founder, Phil Lewis, N2MUN, my good friend and the originator of Ham Radio University 24 years ago. We miss Phil dearly, and we continue on with Ham Radio University in his memory. So real quick, who's out there? Let me get an idea of your contesting experience. George, please put up the poll. Tell us whether you've never operated a contest, operated every now and then, or operate contests a lot.
Okay, 3/4 of the people have voted. Almost everybody has voted, Mel. Leave it open for another 2 seconds. Okay, I'm going to close it and share your results. Can you see?
Again, it's too small for me to read. Read it off to me, George, just real quick.
I've never operated in a contest, 17%. I operate contests every now and then, 61%. I operate contests a lot, 22%.
Okay, so we've got a few newbies. We've got a bunch of what I'll call casual HF contesting operators, and we've got a few people who are more experienced. I hope I can help you all. Let me get myself set here. We did the poll. Just a quick note, anything I say about licensing, band plans, and regulatory information is applicable only to US licensees. Those of you who are outside the FCC's jurisdiction, your mileage may vary. So what is contesting? It's also known as radio sport, and it's competitive amateur radio operating. It all boils down to working as many stations as possible in as many places as possible as quickly as possible, but there are lots of permutations of that. We're going to get into those as we progress here. So how popular is contesting? Here's a quick graph of the number of logs submitted to 5 major contests between 1996 and 2010. And as you can see, back up here a second, you can see there's a steady increase of the number of logs submitted over that 10-year period. I don't have a similar graph now, but here's a look at the number of logs submitted to the CQ Worldwide contests between 2016 and 2020. And if you look here, you'll notice that for all these contests back in 2010, there were 50,000 logs for all of these major contests. And in recent years, for example, in 2020, just in the CQ Worldwide contest, there are almost 20,000 logs. So contesting is really popular. It's one of the most fun things I think you can do on HF. So what class of license do you need to be a contester? What about novices and technicians? Well, all amateur radio licensees can participate in contests. Novices and technicians, they can operate in contests. They can operate in VHF, UHF contests. There are contests beyond the HF bands. They can operate HF phone on 10 meters, 28.3 to 28.5, and there are a lot of contests that include 10 meters, including a 10-meter contest alone every December. They can operate HF Iridium data on 10 meters for those kind of contests. And if they do learn CW, in this era of no code, novices and tech still may learn CW, and they can operate in CW contests on 80, 40, and 15 meters. So how do I find out when the contests are on? WA7BMN runs a contest calendar. It's called contestcalendar.com. It is the most comprehensive listing of all of the contests. You go to contestingcalendar.com. You look at the calendars, and it shows you all of the major contests and a lot of the minor contests that are operating on any particular date. and it has links to information about those contests, the rules, etc., etc. So contestingcalendar.com, real easy to remember in terms of what contests may be on when. What do I do first about contesting? Okay, well, once you go to contestingcalendar.com, you decide which contest you want to operate. And there are different kinds of contests. As I said, there are contests on HF and there are contests on UHF. There are smaller contests. They're short. They go for as little as just a couple of hours, what they call sprints. Or there are contests that are just a day long. There are long contests that operate 48 hours over the course of a weekend. And then there are long contests that goes, over the course of a year. The DX Marathon is a contest that operates all year long. You decide whether you want to be in a contest that's just domestic or DX. If you're in the United States, just stateside. If you're in Europe, European contest, that kind of thing. And then, of course, what mode do you want to operate? CW, phone, RTTY, digital? What kind of contest do you want to operate? So you decide which contest to operate. So you see dozens of contests, and now you decide which contest you want to work. How do I decide how it works? Well, each contest has certain rules, and the rules of the contest explain the dates and times the contest is running, the bands and modes in which the contest is operating, the objective of the contest. It may go beyond just as many stations as possible. There may be specific kinds of stations, stateside DX, let's say state QSO parties. You're looking for contacts with specific types of stations in a particular state. It'll give you the contest exchange. This is the information you use during the contest. I'll explain that in just a second. The entry class. There are different classes of entry. Radio contesting is like golf. There are different classifications, so you're competing on an equal footing with people who have your level of station and power and so forth. And the contest rules explain the different entry classes. The rules explain how to score the contest and how to submit your log. It's by submitting a log that you enter the contest, which, by the way, you don't necessarily have to do. But log submission is how you enter the contest. All that is available on the rules. So what do you send and receive in a contest QSO? Now, all those numbers that you may hear. So each contest QSO contains an exchange of information. The exchange is defined, as I said, in the contest rules. It may be you give your name and state. I would give Mel in New York. Or you may give a signal report and a QSO number, your 59 number 12. Or you may give a signal report and IARU and CQ zone, a signal report, and it'll sound like 595 because you're in CQ zone 5. It may be a signal report and a grid square, 59 FN20 FN30 GT, which is my grid square. You must receive and accurately log the exchange for the QSO to be valid. Now, you'll notice what I said in these examples. I always said signal report, I said 59. No matter what the actual signal report is, everybody wants 59. And why is that? Contest signal reports, they're not intended to convey information about the quality of the signal. They're just part of the exchange. So the contest rules usually just say the exchange is comprised of a signal report, and it doesn't say you have to give an actual signal report or an accurate signal report. Using only 59 means one less piece of information to accurately copy. It speeds up the QSOs. Nothing marks you as a newbie other than giving anything other than 59. So if you're a newcomer to contesting, never mind what you used to in casual QSOs. When you give a signal report, give 59. And in CW, 59 can be shortened to 5NN. It's a much quicker exchange than 599. It's spelled out in CW. In the ARRL sweepstakes, people often get their first experience with ARRL sweepstakes. The sweepstakes exchange is pretty long. It's the longest of any contest and corresponds to the heading of an NTS program. The exchange in sweepstakes is you give a QSO number, you give something called your precedence or your power. That's a letter designation of how much power you're running. You give your call sign, you give the last 2 digits of the year you were first licensed, and you give your section, ARRL section, and that corresponds, as you can see here, to the information in the heading of an ARRL radiogram. That's where that comes from. So the question is, with all this choice, what band should I work and which stations? How much time should I spend? Should you call CQ? Answer CQ. In the immortal words of George Harrison, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. But random operating can be fun. Better to have goals, strategies, and tactics to get the most enjoyment out of contesting, in my experience. The goal is your objective of operating the particular contest. Your strategy is the plan for accomplishing that goal, reaching that goal. And the tactics are the procedures or maneuvers that you use to implement your plan. And here's how that works. What's your objective? Are you going for the higher score? Are you just going for a number of QSOs? I'll often enter a contest, say, well, I'm here for 100 Qs. That's my goal. Are you going for just multipliers, which I'll explain in just a minute, because that can be useful in terms of contesting. Are you looking for new countries to add to your DXCC total? Are you looking for new states for your worked all states or five-band worked all states? Are you a prefix hunter? Are you looking for new prefixes? Are you looking for grid squares? Or are you just in there to have fun, just make a few contacts and have fun? So what's your plan for achieving this? Well, you decide what entry category you're in. As I said, this is the level playing field. Are you a single operator, or are you partnering up with your buddies or radio club members to be a multiple operator operation? Are you going to operate just in a multi-band contest? Are you going to operate just one of the bands available or all bands? Are you going to operate one of the modes? The 10-meter contest, for example, this past December is CW and sideband. You can operate CW alone, sideband alone, or you can operate both. Are you going to operate assistance, that is using a spotting network to find other contacts, or that's sometimes called unlimited category? And what power level? Are you a little pistol? Are you a 100-watt station like I am? Are you a big gun because you have a kilowatt amplifier? Are you a QRP station? There are categories for QRP who are running, just 10 watts or less. Also, to achieve your goal, how many hours of operation are you going to put in? Are you going to, in a 48-hour contest, you can try to stay up all night and put in as many hours as you can? Or are you just going to pick and choose how much time you put in? What times of day you're going to operate? You're going to operate, just during the day. You're going to operate at night. You're going to take time out for dinner. Do you have to take your wife out to dinner on a Saturday night for a contest? Well, you got to decide how to do that. All right, so here are the tactics. There are two tactics at basically in a contest. You can run, that is, you can call CQ and you can have stations come back to you, you hope, or you can search and pants. You can look at the band on your scope or tune the band and find stations that are calling CQ, and you can answer them. So those are the two tactical bases for how you do contesting: run or search and pounce. But in a multi-band contest, for example, or a multi-mode contest, the question becomes, what's your rate? How many QSOs per hour are you getting in the particular band or mode that you're using? And do you want to switch bands or modes? And are you getting enough multipliers, the value of multipliers? This is the second time I've mentioned multipliers, and I'm going to explain those in just a minute. And then there's, what are your on-off times? What are the times of day that you're going to be on-off? Are you going to try to operate all daytime, nighttime on the lower bands? Are you going to operate gray line? Operate in the gray line, okay? The gray line has certain specific characteristics which can be very useful in contesting, knowing where day and night is and where the gray line is. If you want a great explanation of gray line propagation, just go to your Google web search and type in working the gray line, and you'll get a great presentation, a great document by Paul Harden, NA5N, about working the gray line. You can also look at real-time DX monitors like this one on DX Maps, which shows you what QSOs are going on a particular band at any particular moment in time. This screenshot shows what the QSOs were looking like on the 40-meter band at the time the shot was taken. Lots of stateside contacts going on. Quite a few into Europe, less so into South America, not much into Africa, nothing at all into Asia. So you can use real-time monitoring to know which band to use in a contest. Can be very, very useful. So I mentioned multipliers. So what are multipliers? So we set forth in the contest rule, each QSO in a contest is worth a certain number of points, and then the total number of points is then multiplied by the number of QSOs that meet a certain criteria. So it may be which QSOs are in different states, provinces, or let's say counties, or which ARRL sections, or which DXCC entities, or which CQ or IARU zones are the multipliers, or which grid squares in a VHF UHF contest. Okay, so here's why multipliers are important. Multipliers are what make contests interesting and create the need for strategy, because without multipliers, every contest would be simply a competition to see who can make the most contacts. But with multipliers, it's possible for Station A to have fewer contacts, fewer QSOs, but still outscore Station B. Let's look at how this works. In the ARRL 10-meter contest, which was this past December, just a few weeks ago, the QSOs on phone count 2 points each. And the multipliers are the number of stations you work in different US and Mexican states, Canadian provinces, and DXCC entities. So the QSOs are ×2, gives you the number of QSO points, and then you multiply that by the number of multipliers to get your total score. So here's how this works. Station A works 200 QSOs. 100 of them are unique states, provinces, and DXCC entities. So 200 QSOs times 2.2 is 400 QSO points. 400 QSO points times 100 multipliers is 40,000 points. This also explains why you see that contest scores get so high. Now let's look at Station B. Now Station B only works 175 QSOs, but 125 of them are unique states, provinces, and DXCC entities. So we take the 175 QSOs and times 2 is 350 QSO points. If it was just QSOs, then he would not catch Station A. But when we take the 350 QSO points and multiply by the 125 multipliers, we get 43,750 points. Station B outscores Station A by 3,750 points, even though he worked 25 fewer QSOs. That's why multipliers are important. Multipliers can really make a big difference. Back in 2001, look at these claimed scores for number 10 through 13 in the single sideband category. W8DD and KS2G, yours truly, each worked 1,122 QSOs, but DD worked 139 mults, 15 more mults than I did. So his 15 additional mults were worth 33,660 points. I would have to have had 136 more QSOs unless I had, unless I had more multipliers. Now look down the list; it gets even worse. KB7XL outscored both of us. He had 1,143 QSOs, and Station 13 KE5OG had 1,189 QSOs, a lot more than both of us, but he finished 2 slots behind us. So QSO multipliers are really what makes a big difference. So does your really, regular average good old boy have a chance to be a top scoring contester? Well, to finish top 10 in your category in a big contest, you don't need a big antenna up really high, and you don't need a kilowatt amplifier, because if you're in a low power category or a QRP category, no one will have an amplifier. You don't necessarily need the latest model top of the line rig with the DSP and the memories and the dual watts and receive, etc. What you need is smarts and tenacity about what we talked about earlier in terms of goals and tactics and so forth. Smarts and tenacity counts more than hardware. I have a 100-watt transceiver, don't own an amplifier. I have a 3-element Yagi on my roof at 35 feet, and I have lots of certificates from contests. With the right strategy, putting in more hours yields higher returns than putting out more watts. So what information goes into a contest log? Well, date and time, obviously, and always log in UTC. Check your computer log against WWV and set or confirm the offset from your local time. You need the date and time, you need the band, you need the contest exchange in the log, and the log should help you keep track of the points, multipliers, and score. It's the first 3 things on this list that go into the actual log. The points, multipliers, and score usually are additional, okay? This is what you need to enter the QSO in the contest. Do you have to use a computer? No, you can still log by hand, but you need a log, and then you need a dupe sheet, because most contests require you not to work the same station more than once or more than once per band or mode. And you'll need a multiplier list to, calculate your multipliers. You might need a prefix list. You might need a zone or grid map, and you probably want a scratch pad to figure out who you're working, and you'll need a calculator to figure out your score, and you'll need to fill out a summary sheet, and it's a lot to do. And these days, many contests no longer allow you to submit a handwritten log. You have to take the handwritten log that you just went through to do all of this, and then you have to go to an online tool to submit the QSOs one by one. So a better way to do this is, of course, by computer with specialized contesting software. The most popular contesting software these days is N1MM Plus, the N1MM Plus logger. It's a Windows program, and it's free, and it's constantly being updated and corrected and bugs taken out of it. The joke is N1MM updates every 5 minutes. Almost every time I boot up N1MM after a week or so, I find new updates to be sure that it's up to date. They add the different information about, they're adding templates for different contests and so forth, and rule changes and things like that. N1MM logger, Windows and free. WriteLog is Windows, not free. It's a commercial program, very good, still popular. WinTest is another one. There are lots of others out there. My favorite happens to be N1MM, but there are lots of other ones. For you Mac users and Linux users, there are specialized contesting software programs as well. RumpPD for Mac, Skookum for a Mac is free, and YFK test for Linux is free. So what do these programs do? Okay, so you log your contacts. They check for dupes as you're going along. If you want to be sure not to work any dupes, as you're going along, it tallies your multipliers and it calculates your running score. It tracks the rate, how many QSOs per hour you're doing, so you can see how well you're doing, whether you want to do any band or mode switches. It monitors the spotting network if you're operating assisted or unlimited, and it shows you new stations or multipliers that are available for you as they come up. It can either use or trigger a voice as CW memory keyer. N1MM has a voice keyer built in, or it can trigger the voice keyer in your radio, which is what I use it for. It's also serve as a really digital interface for those kind of contests. With the proper kinds of software interfaces and physical interfaces, it can control the radio. N1MM, for example, when it's linked to your computer controllable radio, when you change frequency on N1MM, it changes frequency on the radio and vice versa. With the right interfaces, it can move your antenna to different antenna headings and so forth. The software will summarize and analyze your results. It will generate a Cabrillo log, and the Cabrillo log format is what you use to submit your log for most contests. And many programs, but not N1MM, will print QSL cards or labels for you. N1MM does not do that. They have staunchly refused to put in a module to do that, but you can export your Cabrillo log to external programs that will do that for you. So besides the logging, how can it help you? It'll show you which bands to work when, depending on your rate and band conditions. It finds the stations and multipliers that you work. It'll help increase your QSO rate and your QSO total, and increase your mode total, and it'll decrease or eliminate dupes for you, as we discussed earlier. So to set up a new station for contesting, what would be the items that you need? Well, any station can be used for contesting, which means you need a transceiver or a transmitter-receiver combination. Obviously, you need an antenna to get out. You don't need a linear amplifier, as I mentioned earlier. For a phone, you need a microphone. For CW, you need a straight key or an electronic keyer. And for digital, you need a digital interface. But one thing to keep in mind for all these things, the most important piece of information in the contesting shack are none of those above. It's the operator chair and your desk. You are going to spend long periods of time sitting and looking at your radio and computer screen, and you want to keep in mind, the best ergonomics you can buy. The best money you can spend in a contesting station is buy the best chair you can find. If you have to spend a couple of $100 on a chair for contesting, you're going to find it's well worth it. Your back will thank you for it. The most important consideration for station layout, as I said, is ergonomics. You want to be able to see and reach all the devices, displays, and controls you need most often, and perform the required functions with a minimum of movement. Some useful accessories: a CW memory keyer, because you automatically call your competitive CQs, a boom microphone or a boom mic headset, which is what I use, so you can move around the shack more conveniently. You can turn your head to look at different displays in the radio and so forth. A foot switch. I'm a fan of foot switches rather than Vox. Some people prefer Vox. I think a foot switch gives you more control. An audio voice keyer, again, like a CW memory keyer, to enable you to call CQ repetitively or send the contest exchange and so forth. That it's interesting to note some of these accessories like a CW memory keyer and a voice keyer are often built into the radio these days, so you don't even have to buy an external device to take advantage of that. So it's not an operating consideration, but when you set up your ham radio contesting shack, it's great to be able to set up your desk so it's not up against a wall, or if it's up, or to set it up on casters so that you can pull it out from behind the wall. So you can set it up for optimum station maintenance modification, because every once in a while during a contest, you're going to find a cable comes loose or gets tangled, and you want to get back there to be able to untangle the mess. Some questions. These are questions I have found posted on ham radio online forums about contesting. So, is it acceptable for a non-contest station? You're not in the contest, but you hear a CQ and you want to answer it and you want to help out the guy, or it's a station you need for worked all states or a new DXCC country. Can you make that contact? Absolutely. Contest stations are looking for as many contacts as possible, and every QSO counts. So am I wasting their time because your QSO is not verifiable? Well, absolutely not. You don't have to be in the contest. You don't have to submit a log to provide valid QSOs in almost all contests. There may be a handful of exceptions that this is not the case, but generally speaking, in any major contest that you come across, you don't have to be in the contest. You don't have to submit a log to provide valid QSOs. But if you're going to do that, you're not going to submit a log, make a handful of QSOs, make 3 or 4 QSOs, so that way you don't show up as a unique call sign, and the station working you might be penalized as you being a busted call or an incorrectly log call sign. So don't have to submit a log, make 3 or 4 contacts in the contest. QSO parties. You hear QSO parties announcing a particular state. Are they looking for replies from only their state? No, they're looking for contacts from both their state and the stations elsewhere. That's the way state QSO parties work. In-state stations are looking for other in-state stations and other stations outside the state. If you're an outside station, you can enter the contest and submit a log and receive awards. So you can work stations. So let's say we have the New York State QSO party, which is every October. I operate the New York State QSO party. I'm looking for other stations in New York State because the multipliers there are the different counties in New York State. So I want as many state counties as possible, but QSO points are everybody. So I'll work stations inside New York, outside the United States, doesn't matter to me. If a foreign station asks for contact, as I said, during a QSO party, will the US station reply? No, of course, they're fine. Yep, I'll reply. I get a DX station during the New York QSO party. I put them in a log. I get points for a station outside New York State, not rude or improper. Multiple contests and bands. Okay, there are 2 contests on this on the band at the same time. Can I operate both of them? Yes, you can. Just be sure to ask for that the stations you work provide the exchange information for both events, and you have to keep separate logs to submit to the different contests. Okay. Let's see, all band contests. If I enter an HF contest, that's on all bands. Do I go back to serial number 1 when I change to a different band? No, serial numbers continue across all bands. So, I operate, 20 meters, I work 20 stations, I switch to 40 meters, I start with QSL number 21 on 40 meters. However, you may or may not be able to work the same station or multiplier on more than one band. That depends on the rules, as I alluded to earlier. Duplicate contacts. Should I work dupe station? Should I work duplicate station? Well, that's a matter of opinion, sometimes hotly debated. Some people think working dupes wastes too much time. Some people think it's quicker to work them rather than to tell them. There's no penalty for dupes in your log, so why not? So a lot of people say, just work them, put them in the log. That dupes doesn't matter. There's no penalty. It helps the other station, because the other station, you say, okay, station works, I say, you're a dupe. Station says, I don't have you in my log. Good. I put that station in my log. It's a dupe. Doesn't cost me anything. Puts me properly in his log where he may have busted my call elsewhere. So it may help him out. Now, one thing to be take note of is the specialized contesting software that I pointed out earlier. It often tells you that not only that the station you're trying to work is a dupe, or the station trying to work you is a dupe, it'll tell you in your log exactly when you work them. So you can go back to the log and tell the station, oh, I worked you at such and such a date and time. So they can go back and fix their log if they want to. I can still work them as dupe, but they can fix their log so they don't get penalized for a busted call. All right. Should you remove dupes from your log? As I said, no. Once they're in the log, you just leave them in. There's no penalty. Your log should reflect exactly what you worked during the contest. It helps the other station who may have busted the call. Let's talk about QSLing. Is it proper? Is it a good idea? Is it worth it to send QSL cards for contest contacts? Well, absolutely, for sure. Contesting is one of the best ways to get the contacts you need for various awards. Almost every contest I get into, I will find something new that I've worked on, a different mode or a different band or something like that. Pardon me for 1 second. If you are going to send QSLs to contest stations, make it easy for them. As I said, I'm a contester. I work hundreds of contacts in contests. If I got QSLs from all of them, it would be a massive task for me to respond to them. If you're sending cards, on paper, send stateside cards with a self-addressed stamped envelopes. Send DX cards. If you're sending them direct, send them with green stamps or dollar bills, $1 or $2 or $3 bills. If you go on that QRZ page, stations will tell you what they want in QSL in QSLs in terms of green stamps. If you're sending QSL direct to overseas station, do not put anything on the envelope that indicates amateur radio. Don't put amateur radio station. Don't put their call sign. Don't put your call sign. Postal authorities in many overseas countries have long figured out that there is money inside ham radio envelopes, and they will take it out for themselves, and they probably won't forward your card to the desired station after they take the money. Use Logbook of the World and or Club Log for electronic QSLs. EQSL and QRZ.com Logbook are not really that popular among contesters. Logbook of the World is sort of the gold standard. Use QSL bureaus if you don't mind waiting. Outgoing ARRL QSL bureaus, incoming bureau from your call district QSL bureau, but that takes a lot of time. Where can I get information about contesting? There's lots of it out there. On paper, QST Magazine has lots of information about contesting. They have a contest calendar in every issue of QST. They have a contesting column. They publish lots of information. ARRL puts out a National Contest Journal publication. This is it's a thinner publication. It's exclusively about contesting. It has the results of some specialized contests, the North American QSO parties and the North American Sprint contests all appear in the National Contest Journal, and it's well worth the subscription price. CQ Magazine, which sponsors a lot of contests, has a lot of of information about contesting in their magazine. They publish the full results on paper. ARRL no longer publishes full contest results in QST magazine. They publish an article summarizing the contest, and the so-called line scores are now online. The only exception to that is field day, which is not technically considered a contest. Where can you get information on contesting online? All sorts of places. Contestingcalendar.com that I mentioned. The amateur radio contesting FAQ, which you see here. And again, this deck, last year's version of this deck is on the Ham Radio University .org website, and you can get these web addresses. The KA9 Fox Contest Library is great. Contesting.com is another great resource. And K9JY's contesting tips, another great resource. So what are the contesting coming up? If you want to get your feet wet or you want to jump in, well, you can jump in this very weekend. The ARRL RIDI Roundup is going on even as we speak and goes through tomorrow, so you can get on there. Some new contests. I mentioned the North American QSO parties, CW on January 14th and January 21st for Cy-Ben. These are casual contests. They're one-day contests, and they're less intense, let's call it, than some of the bigger contests. They're easy to get into, and they're mostly stateside. So if you're a domestic operator, time to do that. In February 11-12, CQ Worldwide WPX RIDI contest. The multiplier in that contest are prefixes. February 26th, North American QSO Party RIDI. And March 4th or 5th is one of the big DX contests, ARRL DX sideband contests coming up on March 4th or 5th. So that about does it for now. There's a time for some questions if we have them. As I said, the slide deck will be up on the HRU website. Please go to our YouTube channel and subscribe to that channel. That's free. So is HRU, and so is our website. But to help us pay the bills, it's appreciated if you do donate a few dollars. hamradiouniversity.org, and go to our YouTube channel to subscribe. So that about does it. We have time for a few questions, George, if there are any.
Yes, we have questions. And if you want to ask a question, there's a little tab on your control panel called Questions. If you click on the arrow on the left-hand side of that tab, that will open the questions panel, and you'll be able to enter a question. Mel, our first question is, it seems that the DX big guns are getting on hours earlier than the start time to keep the frequency idle for themselves. It's a great way to see if your own station is getting out without the pileup. Do you care to comment on this practice?
Well, I think they go on for a variety of reasons. One of them may be to hold a frequency, but most big guns, they can hold a frequency anytime they put themselves down in an empty spot. It's a way of testing your station for sure, and I will work some of those guys to see how I'm getting out, and I will do it myself. I'm not a big gun. As I said, I run 100 watts into a tri-bander at 35 feet. And I will go on to test my station to be sure everything's working okay, and also to see what propagation is like, to see who's hearing me. You can get a good feel for propagation by going on in advance of the contest. So it's always a good idea to check out your station well in advance of the contest, but the day of the contest, always turn on the station a little before the contest starts to be sure everything's working, everything's getting out okay, and there are no problems. What else, George?
Can you explain the sprint?
The sprints are 4-hour contests. Again, if you go online and you Google North American Sprint, they're 4-hour contests, and the way they work, it's a little bit different from most contests. In most contests, if you want to run, you can get on a frequency and you can start calling CQ, and as you get answers, you stay on that frequency, and more people come. In the sprints, you have to change frequency. When you call CQ, after you make your QSO, you have to change frequency, and the station that answered you gets to call CQ on that frequency. So it's like a jumping jack type of contest, right? So you call CQ, a station answers you, you go to another frequency to either call CQ or answer another station. When you answer that other station, you get his or her frequency to call CQ on. That's the way the sprints work, and they're only 4 hours long. That's what they call. That's why they're called sprints. So that they're an interesting format, and they're quick. They're only 4 hours long. So that's what the sprints are all about.
Okay, that's all the questions we have at this time, Mel.
Okay, great. I appreciate the question. As I've said to all of you, please go to the hamradiouniversity.org website. Consider a donation. You can look at past presentations, the decks that I use in this presentation, and the basics of HF operating that I did in the previous hour. Last year's and previous years slide decks in PDF form are up on the website. And if you go to our YouTube channel, we have a lot of our presentations up on the YouTube channel from last year's HRU. This year's it'll take us a couple weeks to get the current presentations up on YouTube channel. If you go to the YouTube channel, please subscribe. It doesn't cost anything, and it helps us maintain our space on the channel. So again, any last call for any questions?
You may want to comment on the survey at the end.
Oh yeah, okay. Thanks, George. Thanks for reminding me. Yeah, when you log off, when we close the forum, when we close the presentation, there'll be a quick survey that you can fill out. We'd appreciate that. We'd like to know what you think of the presentation, what you like, what you didn't like, and what we can do to make it better. So stick around when George closes the webinar, and please do the survey. And again, please don't be shy. Anything that you think of after the fact, feel free to email me at KS2G@ARRL.net. With that, 73, and enjoy the rest of HRU. Thank you.